Everybody right to go? Well, firstly, I want to thank Victorians for staying the course. We are defeating this virus, and we have 2 new cases today and only 1 yesterday. We are at the point where we can progress a number of changes. We're extending the 5 kilometre shopping and exercise rule to 25 kilometres. And the best news for every single one of us who's had months of bad hair days, hairdressers will be reopening from tomorrow. And more good news, from the 1st of November, we'll move to the 3rd step of retail and hospitality opening back up. We may even be able to move faster to that step if we keep on holding the line and tracking as well as we are right now. It will mean we'll be moving to stay safe rather than stay home and stay safe, with no restrictions on reasons to leave the house. Bring on the beers and the lattes in November. I'm sure you've now got some questions for me.
Premier, 2 weeks ago, the President of the United States and the First Lady were embroiled in yet more scandals. It was revealed that Trump had paid only $750 in tax and that he owned millions to overseas interests. During the first presidential debate with him and Joe Biden, the president refused to condemn white supremacists, the Proud Boys. To make matters worse for them, audio recordings surfaced when Melania declared that she couldn't, and I quote, give a fuck about Christmas.
Well, thanks for that. Was there a question there, Petter?
Yes, it was your fault that Trump contracted COVID and then spread it through the White House staff, wasn't it?
Look, I'm not going to stand here and have things put to me and attempt to perhaps have them put to me so often that they then become the truth.
Premier, the Prime Minister postponed the National Cabinet meeting on Friday as there are allegedly technical problems with the RWAF plane bringing him back from Queensland. Will you admit you emptied the fuel tank of the plane to avoid having to sit in a meeting with him?
With greatest respect, as always. Seriously, Rachel, what's the issue?
Premier, European nations are experiencing a second wave. France has brought in curfews similar to what we've lived through in Victoria. Do you think the way you've been behaving like a dictator by imposing curfews has rubbed off on other world leaders?
Look, cheap politics does not work against this wildly infectious virus. If it did, then those who are completely irrelevant would have a much greater part to play.
But if it's found that you're to blame for Europe's second wave, are you going to resign?
Look, I don't run from challenges. That's not who I am. And if it's not clear to you by now, then perhaps you don't know me very well. My view is you don't run from difficult tasks, and it always has been that. You don't run from challenges. You just get on and get the job done. That's who I am. That's what I'm doing and always have been doing and will continue to doing. And that position will not be changing.
Premier, my coffee went cold while I was in the shower this morning, and by the time I was ready to drink it, the milk had curdled on top.
And your question is?
I used to date a barista, and my coffee never went cold.
Well, I'm very pleased for you.
You've now done over 100 of these press conferences. Are you deliberately attempting to set a world record for press conferences so that the mainstream media tells the world how amazing you are?
Look, I'm not motivated by headlines. If I were, I wouldn't be here today, because there hasn't been that many good ones, has there?
Well, Jacinda Ardern has just won the New Zealand election with a landslide. And your cult of dance stands are abandoning you, aren't they, Premier? Because you're certainly no Jacinda Ardern, are you?
And you're no Kerry O'Brien, are you, Peter?
On the subject of New Zealand, Premier, you emailed Brett Sutton to welcome Kiwis from across the ditch as part of the new travel bubble, didn't you? And now you're trying to blame the federal government and Sydney Airport for letting 17 Kiwis get on a plane from Sydney and travel to Melbourne.
That is simply not correct. Surely it is not beyond those who are responsible for the borders of our nation, making sure that only those states who are in the New Zealand bubble can receive domestic passengers after they have arrived into an international airport. And by the way, we just found out it was 55 people. Seriously, My advice to Minister Tugg, whatever the fuck his name is, instead of stubbornly defending this, just work with us and let's make sure Victoria is not part of a bubble that we never agreed to be in. And speaking of bubbles that people never agreed to be in, another 25 Kiwis have landed in the independent sovereign nation of Australia. And my esteemed colleague, Supreme Leader for Life, Mr. Mark McGowan, isn't very happy right now.
Premier, who do you think will win the Queensland election?
Politics has never been less important to me than it is right now.
But what's your opinion on the Queensland election? Do you think Deb Frecklington would have a better chance of winning if she wore a North Face jacket instead of the obligatory blue shirt and chinos?
I'm about doing what is right, not about doing what is popular. So a North Face jacket might work in Victoria, but it would also be way too hot in Queensland.
Greg Hunt says it's time Victoria ends COVID restrictions and joins the gold standard state of New South Wales in being totally complacent and allowing 40,000 spectators to attend a footy match.
Some people whose names rhyme with certain words should reflect on the fact that they are in fact a health minister that actually requires a certain standard.
Did former New South Wales MP Darryl Maguire ever offer to arrange a meeting with yourself and Premier Gladys Berejiklian?
My tolerance for answering questions which frankly are offensive is waning.
Did he ever ask you to help him pay off his debts?
Please use your words very carefully.
Have any property developers ever offered you cash in a paper bag?
I will not have innuendo or incorrect statements put to me in such a way which I have found offensive.
Or will you apologise to the people of Australia for not dobbing in the Premier of New South Wales for having a relationship with a corrupt MP she fired 2 years ago?
I know the people of this state know that I've done nothing wrong. I never have. I never will. I appreciate the questions you'll need to ask and I've answered them in full detail, but you also have to respect my position as Premier of Victoria and not New South Wales, and let me do my job. Right, are there any other questions that Victorians actually care about? Thank you. I'll see you again tomorrow.